I want to thank you for joining Light Pollution News this month, and thank you for joining every month. We cover everything from technological trends to cultural impacts to how artificial light affects the environment, health, safety. Your support is crucial to helping us get all of these covered. By backing Light Pollution News, you stay informed, you hear from experts, and you learn how to make a positive impact in your community. Help us reach new audiences and spread awareness about this vital issue. Join our community of stargazers, eco-warriors, and concerned citizens today by becoming a supporter. Supporters are our only source of income on the show, and currently you, the supporter, have made it possible for us to cover most of our costs. So thank you very much for that. We'd like to continue to grow the show and thereby grow awareness. So please consider supporting Light Pollution News. You can learn more by clicking on the Help Us Grow link on our website or simply by clicking on the Help Us Grow link in today's show notes. Light Pollution News, November 2024. Looking up matters. Today, one man in New Zealand is attempting to bring standards to the space economy. The lights go dim over storm-ravaged southern towns. And wouldn't it be interesting if you could build your own sky quality meter? Well, we have instructions included in today's show. I couldn't be more thrilled about this month's panel, including Kevin Beare, whom you may know better as CapeMayAstro. Michael Rymer from Dark Sky makes a return visit. And the always insightful Frank Turina joins us once again. You'll definitely want to listen to this episode of Light Pollution News coming right up. Welcome to another Light Pollution News. I'm your host, Bill McGeaney. Glad to have you joining us as we explore the stories in the news as it relates specifically to the topic of light pollution. For you new to the show, Light Pollution News is a twice-monthly show where I bring on three great guests to help walk you through the month's news. Light Pollution News aims to build engagement and conversation around the topics affecting light pollution and further grow awareness to help us make the best decision for a better tomorrow. And for you, the regular listener, I know you love the content we're putting out here. Have you ever thought about subscribing to our mailing list? It's a once-a-month release that features the top stories that we think you need to see each month. I also include articles in there that we may not cover on the show. And you also get access to the whole catalog of news that has come through that month. Oh, and one more bonus. You'll receive access to listen to both monthly shows right out of the gate, so there's no more waiting 2 weeks before you hear the second half of this show. That's a pretty good mailer, right? We think so. So why not sign up today? Scroll over to lightpollutionnews.com/contact to sign up. And finally, before we start things off, check to make sure you're subscribed to Light Pollution News, the show, the actual show you're listening to right here, via whatever podcast player you're listening from. If not, hit the subscribe button and be sure to follow and say hi to us over at LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and more. We love to hear back from you, our listener. After all, this is why we put the show together. So definitely give us a shout out. All right, how about we get the show on the road, guys? I have a feeling that this will be a real fun show. I have a fun lineup here. At least I think it's fun. Maybe some of them may be unfamiliar faces to you at home, but at least one, maybe two are very familiar faces. So starting off, I'm always thrilled to have a return guest, especially grateful that he agreed to jump in on very short notice, as I needed to reschedule one of our original guests, Dr. Samantha Lawler, who actually had commitments with the UN. She was doing some work with the UN this month. So she asked to, she was a little bit busy and she didn't want to be overloaded. So I said, okay, I'll do my best to swap her out. And Frank Turina, you jumped in here last second. I really, really appreciate that. And plus, it's always good to have you on the show, man. It's such a good time. I want to welcome back Mr. Frank Turina. If you're not familiar with him, because he's been on three episodes, I'm not sure. This might be your third. 15 plus years of working with the U.S. National Park Service, in-depth knowledge of what some, maybe not the ones here, would call lesser known pollutants that affect park ecology, right? And of course, your expertise, Frank, is stemming from your adjunct role at University of Denver, where you educate students on environmental policy, educating the next crop on how to create a better tomorrow from a policy standpoint. So Frank, last time we spoke, you had massive fires around you. How's life out there now? Is it a little quieter?
It was, the early part of the summer was fairly wet. We didn't have much fire risk. And then in July, the rain stopped and things really dried out. And so we had a couple of months where the fire risk was much higher than we liked. And we live in I can't remember the organization that ranks areas for like high fire risk, but we live in the number 1 in the state and number 3 in the country for fire risk. So everybody's on high alert around here. Anytime there's even a small brush fire, people tend to react. And the last time we were on, we had, I think I was going to be an audience member for back in July, and I had to bail because we had a fire about 3 miles away and the wind was picking up and it was heading our direction. And so we ended up evacuating for just a few hours. We came back after they had gotten the fire under control.
How do you even prepare for something like that? Do you guys have some contingency plans now that you've had it so close and you lucked out? Thank God you lucked out.
Yeah. It's in a way, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Right. And so we do, my wife and I were laughing because we have a go bag, right? That's sort of there by the door that we could just grab, and there's really nothing in it. So, everything is computerized. Everything is on the cloud. Everything is, so there's really nothing that we feel like, oh, we have to have this document or we have to have, something that, that we to take with us. So we're not encumbered by much. We just kind of get in the car and take off. So, and then we have some places that we can stay down in Denver for, if it's an extended evacuation.
Well, let's hope nothing ever happens. Let's hope that's just a
exactly.
random fear, and you're prepared. It sounds like you guys are ready. Yeah. I mean, that has to be the most stressful nightmare a person could have is knowing at any moment, everything, it's not just, your digital stuff, right, Frank? It's the little things that you've kept all of your life.
Exactly. Yeah. And we've sort of come to the conclusion or accepted that, if, the most important thing is for us to get out, and we're not going to mess around and wait until we get evacuated or try to find something that we think we need. We're just, as soon as we get the feeling that we need to get out, we're just going to take off. And like we keep saying, nothing is more important than us getting out safely.
Yeah. Well, since last you were on as a guest, we've seen a solar eclipse, auroras, and now there's a comet. I don't know if we can cram anything more into the short time frame between bookends here, Frank. What's next year? Before you come on next time, what's going to happen?
This has been a fantastic year. I feel, the first time we had the auroras where everybody, got all the great pictures and it was all over Instagram and social media, I was I didn't get any images. I was really kind of bummed because, over the years, since I've been doing astrophotography and night sky photography, there have been dozens of days where everybody said, oh, the auroras are going to be spectacular. This is the day. And I'd stay up and I'd go out and they'd be, not that great. I'd be barely visible, or if you could barely get a little glow in my camera. And so when it happened again, the first time this year, I was like, do I fall for this again? And so I didn't go out. And the next day it was like everywhere, right? It was the aurora of a lifetime. And so I was really kicked myself. And so this time when they announced that it was going to be a good aurora, I did get out and get some images. So yeah, it turned out it was fun.
We had Nico Carver on last month, and Nico was saying, he's like, Bill, how come you haven't been able to see it? You've had plenty of chances. At literally every time we've had the aurora, I've been in a place that's been under the thickest cloud cover you could ever possibly find. So, but we did catch it. We finally caught it. Actually, we prepared for it. We had kind of like a day contingency plan where, we were keeping an eye on one that might pop up later, 2 weeks ago. We had a contingency plan ready. We saw that was going to pop. We got in a car and drove to where there might be some dark skies, and didn't really need to go to dark skies because the whole way up. Yeah, Kevin, I see you nodding over there. The whole way up 476 here in Eastern PA, it was just popping left and right, which is very, very cool.
And the comet, I have to just say, I think we'll talk about it a little bit later on too, but the comet is just amazing.
Yes, hold the thought. Hold the thought.
Okay.
We'll
that was just good.
We'll get to that. Well, let's move on. And we have another one making his return visit. Mike, I think it was this time last year, Michael Rymer from Dark Sky. And Mike, what do you do all for Dark Sky? Because I know you do a lot. You do presentations, you try and do sales pitches to parks.
Yeah. I kind of wear a lot of hats for the organization ever since I, was an intern starting in 2022, kind of on the engagement side of things. But now, I'm on the program, side of the organization where, and this all kind of happened from a grant that our organization got in from New Mexico. And it was to kind of do intentional focused work in the state and then expand to the Southwest region of the United States to kind of, bring people closer together, build a coalition of stakeholders with vested interest, not just with Dark Skies directly, but, ecological organizations, energy and all these things, really start making some work to bring people to the table and start talking about positive change. And one of those big things right now is kind of working on updating the state legislation in New Mexico about the Night Skies Protection Act. So it's a 25-year-old piece of legislation that we're currently working with the statewide chapter in New Mexico on. But even bigger picture than that for me specifically, it's bringing, dark sky groups together to kind of hear about what everybody's working on, share some ideas, maybe get some interstate cooperation. And then a lot of my day-to-day is working on the International Dark Sky Place program, focusing on projects in the West and Southwest. So I have about 50 in the pipeline in this wonderful part of the state, just to myself, or the country. And I mean, it's got the highest concentration of certified places in the world. And that list is rapidly growing, especially in Colorado where I live. And Frank, this as well as I do, living there. So Big things happening in this part of the country for sure.
It sounds like a horrible job. So what you end up doing is driving to the most amazing places in the United States and try and certify them, essentially.
That's what we tried. I mean, I would love to be a traveling salesman. No doubt about it. A lot of it is, most of it's really just work from home, but every once in a while can get out there on the road and actually go. I went to the Grand Canyon Star Party this summer and gave a presentation during their week-long thing. So, that's pretty cool because they just celebrated a huge milestone in reaching 90% compliance for their park certification this year. Yeah, so they got their certification 5 years ago, and at the 5-year mark for a park, you're supposed to have 90% of your lights compliant. And they reached that 90%, and they are a park with 5,000 fixtures. So that's a pretty big deal. So that was cool to celebrate with them.
Yeah, that's big news. Congratulations to everyone over there at Dark Sky.
Absolutely.
Nice, hard work there. I was thinking, Mike, if you were doing traveling sales, you could probably get in bed with a really good lighting company out there. Sell some good fixtures along with
here's a good one, here's the bad
and
one.
Hey, you know what? We're going to go Dark Sky, and I got these brand new, these really good certified.
Try these out.
Yeah. That might
I think he needs a driver.
Yeah, right.
Oh, I'll take it.
So you can concentrate, and I'll bring my telescopes.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Well, that voice you hear that is the third voice that I haven't brought to light yet, is someone who some of you may be aware of and some may not be. I want to welcome Kevin Beare to Beare, right? I'm saying that right.
Bear, like the animal, yes.
Yes, all right. Kevin Beare to the show. Kevin Beare, if you follow him on TikTok or Instagram Reels, you'll know him by CapeMayAstro. And he does an amazing job. I mean, seriously amazing job with sidewalk astronomy in the town, in the community of Cape May. Kevin, we share a little bit of the origin story here. Why don't you tell me what brought you to doing sidewalk astronomy?
Yeah, you can see the shirt and tie on right now is because I just got back from unfortunate house call. I'm a funeral director here in Cape May, and it's part of my therapy, so to speak. But anyway, I began.
Yeah, I guess Kevin, that's probably an emotional toll when you're a funeral director, right? Because the whole time you're probably someone that people are, at least, they're always sad, right? But they're also probably kind of leaning on you for guidance. And
well, wait till I share this story with you. It was really kind of unique. I know I might be jumping ahead, but I think it's a really good intro to what I do. But anyway, I started back in 2020. It was August, the first summer of lockdown. And I was just really, really getting tired of the lockdown. And I've always been into astronomy. My grandmother introduced me to my first meteor shower when I was 8 years old. So that was dating myself, but that was back in, the early 70s. But anyway, I had the opportunity to have her share the beauty of the darkness, as I like to say, and saw my first meteor. And I'm like, one more. But anyway, from there, I started investigating on Instagram, and I didn't find my Turina observation station, which is a company. It's a smart telescope out of France. And all of a sudden, because I was looking for, telescope information and, astronomy information, all of a sudden the AI, even back then, started to populate, advertising. And all of a sudden what popped out was, this Vaonis Turina observation station, a smart telescope, which I could connect to via a cell phone or a tablet at the time. So I was able to purchase. I investigated for about 3 weeks. I saw that you could put this telescope. They put it up on top of a parking lot in Las Vegas and were shooting, nebulas. And I'm like, that sounds like my cup of tea.
That's a very good sales pitch right there.
Yeah, it's, again, smart telescopes. They have the filter systems in already. Nico, I follow. I've met him before. Great, advocate for, astrophotography. But, my adventure started with, just this lockdown, and I got my first telescope and I started to use it in September. It was delivered. And then it was actually coming up on my 4-year anniversary. I took it, down to Cape May. Cape May is the oldest seashore resort in the nation. We're at mile marker 0 here in the beautiful town of Cape May. I was born and raised here. But anyway, I brought my Turina downtown and I turned off of one of the streets right across the street from Congress Hall, which is a very old, building establishment here in town, and a very lit area. And I pulled into an empty parking spot at what's called the Victoria Motel. And within like 10 seconds, the manager came out and asked me like what I was doing, just parking in a spot at dark when nobody was supposed to be checking in. I just said, I've got my new telescope. I'm trying it out. And immediately Kathleen gets out her, cell phone. She shows me her, star app that she uses. And I'm like, I use that same one.
Oh, wow.
So we bonded immediately. So she let me stay. And within 15, 20 minutes, I actually set up my telescope and I had 50 people around me. And she came back outside and she said, you can stay. So that was my beginning for street corner astronomy that, immediately I had in my mind that it would do just this thing. Galileo was doing street corner astronomy, back in the 1600s, try to prove that, the Earth wasn't the center of our, solar system. So I'm proud to be able to, say that I've been sharing the beauty in the darkness for the past, 4 years, close to 13,000 followers now. I'm just so humbled by the feedback that, again, just the fun thing about street corner astronomy is just the fact that you're surprising somebody with something that they didn't anticipate. Because, my telescopes look kind of crazy. They're not your typical telescope, but they're like always asking me, it's like, why are you here? It's like, and my immediate answer is because you're here. So it's like I could do this all day long, all night long by myself, but it's wonderful being able to have people pass by with this unexpected experience of, sharing the beauty in the darkness. But getting back to the house call that I just had.
It's amazing that stars bring people together.
Yes.
The story you just mentioned about the manager coming out and be like, oh, that's cool. I got this right here. That story is, I hear that a lot. And it's just amazing that stars do bring people together. It is
absolutely amazing. Yeah. So I just wanted to let you know that last night it was almost 12:30 at night. I'm by myself. In fact, my 27-inch tablet just kicked down. I didn't plug it in and I wasn't showing anything. And all of a sudden, this lady walked by and I said hello to her. She turned around. She's like, what are you doing? I was like, oh, I was just sharing, my telescope. And I showed her some pictures of my cell phone. And we shared and talked. And, I shared with her I was a funeral director here in town and, just about some things at the night
and
sky.
You're looking for new victims. No,
yeah.
Sorry.
Well, this is the irony here that all of a sudden, she said, it's really ironic that you say that you're a funeral director because I'm here in town because my father is passing. She shared her father's name and it was Mr. Tice, who I just picked up.
Oh.
So I met her last night and she went for a walk and she said she's shy and she doesn't speak about anybody. And we had a 45-minute conversation about, life and death and, the purpose of having me being there, having a conversation. And it was a really unique experience. And that happens so often, Bill. I can't tell you that, again, I always say that, my profession as a funeral director gives me more than I give it. And I feel as if my telescopes are the same way that people say things to me, but they're giving more than I feel as if I'm giving them. And it's a really wonderful, match, to be able to share, as I like to say, the beauty and the darkness.
What has the reception been like down there? Down in May is in the summertime, it's very touristy. In the fall, it's very touristy. And, what is it like down there?
So this is the story that's really quite unique. I've been doing this for 4 years. And last evening I had a little boy show up and I'm like, I recognize you. It's like, weren't you a gamer? He's like, yes. And his mom's standing there. And all of a sudden I saw his sister. I'm like, you're a dancer. I don't remember names, but I remember stories. So anyway, that was his mom explained to me that was the third time that they'd seen me. And we've had conversation. They saw me this summer up on the promenade, and her son is just 11 years old. So as soon as she saw me, she looked at her son Gavin and she said, "It's okay, Gavin, go see Kevin." So even though it's a touristy town, people are coming to our town very, very frequently. And I see the people that come in the spring, I see the people that come in the summertime, I see the people that come in the fall for the birding. And, they're cyclical, but, I have an amazing following that people come up and it's like, I had a gentleman come up last night. I was like, are you on Instagram? I was like, no, but I heard you were here. I had the police, who support me with my sidewalk astronomy. The gentleman and his wife stopped by and they said, we were at the Cove and 2 police officers said, do you know about CapeMayAstro? He's down with his telescopes. So, I had people all the time show up that, they've heard about the chatter. It's like I had a lady in the spring, drive up to me with her window down. I was out for about 3 hours and she came out, "You're still here." And she's like, "Everybody's talking about you at the Mad Batter." So, what's wonderful is that it has always been my prayer, my hope that the conversations that we have about, life and stars and, the miracles that we all are, they're having conversations with me and they're leaving and they're going out to dinner. And the conversations are continuing without me being there. So that's the gift that, all of a sudden she came and said, "Everybody's talking about you." And we've been friends ever since. I have met so many amazing people, again, thousands of people that, have become really, really loyal friends. And I've never been on social media. I'm still learning. But, again, the appreciation, of what I'm trying to do is just bring awareness that, there's such beauty in the darkness, as I like to say. It's just a really wonderful thing. But these people just keep on coming up. It's like, I follow you, and people stop in the middle of the street. And it's really it's really humbling. It's very fun.
You could have fooled me about never being on social media. I think you do a phenomenal job with your social media channel. And
thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yeah. I mean, I have to stop sometime when we're down. I have to stop over. The problem is we don't come down for the night, right? So that's always the difficult part.
Well, again, it's like I've been doing more solar observations this year now that, we've had this really nice, 11th year solar maximum that's created such beautiful, night skies that we've had. I've shot the aurora, Cape May is like level with, latitude of Washington, D.C. So we're mid latitudes. But, I shot the aurora 13 months ago, and this has been the 5th time that I've been able to share the beauty and the darkness, as I like to say, with, the aurora. And last Thursday, knowing that, what happened in May was really going to happen again, I was confident in the space weather. I'm learning so much from this gentleman called Vincent Ledvina, who's, really great. He's the the aurora guy up in Fairbanks, Alaska. I got an alert this summer saying that, they're seeing naked eye aurora from Washington, D.C. And that was the night of the Perseid meteor shower. That was August 11th and 12th. And so anyway, I'm out with my telescope. We're watching, meteors, at midnight. I get this alert, and I said that, anybody who wants to come over the bay, I'm going to shoot the aurora. And sure enough, I was able to capture a nice substorm over there. So again, it's incredible to be able to, share. And again, last Thursday, what was really incredible is that we had the opportunity of a lifetime, because they said that storm was most likely the largest in 500 years. But I put out a reel that morning, and, I shared it with almost 100,000 people that day. So that was just huge. And the amount of people that came up to me last night saying, "We saw the aurora because of you," because I went live when it was going down. And I learned a lot about Instagram, because that one reel I went and said, "Get outside." I didn't hashtag it. I didn't put an explanation, no music, had 18,000 follows. or looks at, and it was 2 seconds long, and I think it's been watched almost 24 hours so far. So it's just crazy that 2 seconds can turn into 24 hours for 18,000 people looking at it. So it's really fun to see the awareness.
Yeah, the stars bring people together.
Yes, they do.
Kind of crazy that we're leading into a light pollution show talking about stars bringing people together. So, I mean, it's not crazy from the fact that we're doing that, but it's crazy the fact that so many people don't have access to something that is so unifying. So, yes, I want to move forward here. I want to get into our warm-up article because I know, Kevin, you're going to have stuff saying. Frank, you wanted to say on this one. We had a comet, right? The comet Zuchin 83 2023. It graced our skies this October. I actually was able to see it last night. I have these 100mm pair of giant binoculars. Put those out there. I'm in my nice Portal 8 Philadelphia. I was able to see it, no problem. And even star hop over to it, which I heard was a dying skill. I don't know. But in case you're wondering, Zuchin actually translates to Purple Mountain, indicating the observatory of China, where the actual comet was discovered. And Atlas is the corresponding observatory in South Africa, where it was either confirmed or discovered. You needed good horizons initially to catch the really bright naked eye version of this comet. But as it continued on, you didn't really need as good horizons. You just needed some binoculars, and you could really make it out, and it looked phenomenal. So let's get into this. I know, Kevin, I know you saw the comet. Why don't you tell me about how it looked? Did you see it off the, I guess you're looking Bayside. So did you see it off the Bayside?
I did. It's where I shoot the Aurora. My mom grew up right across the street where I shot the Aurora. Town Bank's a town dating back in the whaling years, almost 1600s. It dates back really far. But I was able to capture, Saturday night, I didn't see it before it went around the sun. We had clouds, so it was just, luck of the draw. It came around last Saturday, it was really low in the horizon and I could not see it. And I just told people, it's like, I'm pretty good at this. I've seen comets. I've shot comets before. I couldn't see it. But being determined, went out Sunday night and saw it. And I had, 25, 30 people with me. I used my telescope. I was able to shoot it with my cell phone. I use a Google Pixel 8 Pro, which is amazing. And again, it was fun being able to share that for the first time. And again, the other night I was able to shoot it once again, but one of my C-Star telescopes is actually able to watch it track. So I was able to track it for 11 minutes. And within that 11 minutes, this comet's traveling 180,000 miles per hour. It's traveling at 50 miles a second. Yeah. So in those 11 minutes, you see these golden dots that moving was actually 33,000 miles it traveled in just 11 minutes.
Yeah, it's impressive.
This
cool. Started out as a second magnitude, transition third, somewhere hovering around 4. As we record this right now, it's close to 4. Frank, you were going to mention about seeing it too. I guess, Frank, you have much better skies than we have here, even in Cape May. So your skies are first off dry.
Yeah. so to the west, right? So east of where I live is the gigantic light dome of Denver. Right above my house is pretty much where the light dome starts to diminish, and the skies to the west are, much better. And so where the comet was, a pretty decent sky. Unfortunately, we had, I think the timing was a little bit unfortunate with the moon phase. We still had pretty bright skies from the almost full moon, and couldn't really see it with my naked eye just because the background, the sky was so bright from the moon. But I put my camera out there and took a picture in the direction where I thought it was. And I was shocked, like how big this comet was, the length of the tail.
Yeah.
18 million miles. Yeah.
And it's like, 20 degrees, like 20,
it's huge.
It's gigantic. And so it's taken up like almost a quarter of the sky from the horizon. Yeah, I was shocked. I had to go get a different lens so I could fit it in there. I thought Neowise was, it was.
Now Neowise was 2020, right?
Yeah. And in my view, that was like the best comet I could have ever dreamed of seeing, right? And I saw this one and I was like, this is just spectacular. And so I haven't had a chance to edit my images yet, but the raw images that I have right off the camera look pretty spectacular.
And off the front, the front tail too.
Yeah, the anti-tail.
The anti-tail.
Right?
Yes,
yeah.
the anti-tail. That's the technical term for it, Frank. Yes.
And, it was, and I could see that just in my regular DSLR. I could see that the tail, the anti-tail in front of the head of the Comet. It was pretty spectacular. So I can't wait to find some time to do some editing on my images.
Yep. Mike, I see you nodding your head too. Were you able to catch it?
Oh yeah, I've been catching it for past couple weeks. I tried to catch it in the early morning, somewhere just right outside of kind of Colorado Springs, and of course, you're looking, Frank, kind of like you said, you're looking east, and you're looking over the Front Range, and you're catching those light domes, like they're right in your face. So I didn't see it the morning I went to try to catch it, and then last week I went out to some grasslands in northeast Colorado, and because I was certain of it that I was going to see this thing. Everybody else and their mother has seen it. I need to see this, so I need to go out somewhere where it's no clouds and I can look west in the evening sky and not have to deal with the mountains, of course, to be blocking my view. So I caught it out there, and so that was the first round of picks, and then. Now, I said in the kind of the opening, Bill, I'm out in North Dakota, South Dakota, Wyoming on a road trip. And so last night I went out to Teddy Roosevelt National Park and took some pictures of it against some buttes and stuff. And I plan on doing that again tonight. So, yeah, I mean, you can see it with your naked eye. You got to have some decent vision, of course, depending on where you are. But through the binos, it looks pretty good. And then, I mean, I even took some test shots with my iPhone. Just a 10-second exposure. I mean, you don't have to have a DSLR to get a picture of this thing. That's how kind of spectacular it is. So, and I remember, NEO-wise, that was the first time I took a picture of basically anything in the night sky. And, looking at these pictures now, I've come a long way in 4 years and just excited to see something so prominent like this. And I think what's really important about this, if we can get existential about it with the theme of the show, is that as long as guys like Kevin and Frank, you guys are posting about it, we're posting about it at Dark Sky, whatever gets people outside looking up, that's what matters. This is what gets people excited about astronomy. I mean, that's what, we're all here for. That's why we have this love. And, to tie it back into what I do for Dark Sky, though, we're definitely more conservation minded, even though, of course, a lot of people who are advocates are more astronomy focused, but it's really about conservation. And if we can get more people interested in this part of conservation, asking these questions about what is this thing? What is a comet? What is an aurora? And then even better is they ask the question, well, why can't I see it? I'm seeing all these pictures of people and, why can't I see it where I live? Well, let's investigate that. Let's pull that thread. Why do you think you can't see it? And then that gets our foot in the door for talking about light pollution. And so it's great to have an active year like this, with a couple solar eclipses in North America, comet, aurora throughout the year. Like, this is a sweet time to get people involved. And Kevin, I know you're seeing it out there on the sidewalk, people asking you questions.
Oh, it's still fun. Yes.
Yeah.
Kevin, it's good. Are you seeing people come up and actually be like, oh, I can't see this from home. I wonder why I can't see this. Are you hearing people ask any of these questions?
Yeah, I was a little crazy last night that I've been shooting it down at the Bay all week, and I was out Friday night. I took a test picture, just like you were saying also, that again, it's the easiest way to be able to determine if we're looking in the right direction. I took a test picture, saw it. I tried to manipulate my telescope, again, unfortunately, I'm down to one telescope right now. I'm having upgrade issues with a software issue with Vaonis, but they're working on that. But yes, people are extremely enthused. But again, I tried last night to be able to share it in the downtown Cape May, nuts crazy. I took a test picture from where I was across the street. I could see it, shared it with people, and like, oh, wow, that's great. I said, it's because of light pollution that we're not able to see it here. And people were down at the beach, a block away, and they're coming up showing me pictures of it. So again, people are so enthused with this. I mean, it's great to be able to have the chatter and the news supporting it, but also being able to share with it. Again, this is what happens when, we're in the middle of Cape May trying this. But But again, it's just about exposure. I was able to see the comet, but nothing like I was able to get at the beach. Again, totally two different, pictures. And I shared that with them. I said, this is a picture with light pollution, and this is a picture, looking out of the bay. So with light that's, 17 miles across to Dover, Delaware.
Right.
But yeah, it's wonderful having people that they're very aware of, of what's going on in the night sky. It's really wonderful.
Yeah, that does sound fantastic. And I'm glad that, you're making that distinction. One of the things I would do for outreach is, this is pre-COVID days, but when I have a 12-inch Dobsonia telescope. And for you at home, if you're not aware of it, it's just a kind of a tubular telescope that pivots from the ground. And what I would do for star parties is I would have kids, when they would come up, I'll just take their phone, give them a picture of Saturn or Jupiter or whatever. And then, that way they have something to show to their friends. Because to me, the takeaway is that, you have this is yours now. You have ownership on this, and you can, maybe you'll be able to gain more interest, or maybe you'll be able to drive into kind of seeing more of that, since now you have ownership of it.
Just real quickly, this past summer, though, I don't know if you're aware, but Cape May, we had arches over the promenade. Promenade used to be a boardwalk. People used to walk really well dressed up. And back in the 1900s,
when was that?
It was the 1900s that they put these arches up, and they had lights on them at some point. And it was in the 1940s that they dismantled them because the city of Cape May didn't have the money to be able to keep on replacing these things because of hurricanes, and they didn't want to pay the electric bill. Anyway, a couple of years ago, there was chatter about putting the arches back up, and I was really a negative guy. I was like, man, I don't know about that. Well, the first time I saw them and I went out, with my telescope, the first thing I noticed is that they took down all the telephone poles, they took down all the wires, and they took down all the street lights where they put them. So it was a huge change. And again, people started to come up, the city of Cape May, saying that we did this. And I'm like, oh, no. Look down to the west and take a look at where you see those, the light pollution, see the wires and see the yellow lights up, even though they're yellow 3,000 watt light or 3,000 Kelvin lights, they're still annoying. And I said, we have dark sky here. This has helped us to be able to look across the street, to the north, see the North Star, which I couldn't see the year before with the street lights that they had up there. So again, there was an improvement and an educational moment, and people were like, I never thought of it that way. So again, even though they saw this promenade with new arches that were obscuring the view, it was a matter of what's behind that. Again, there's more darkness in that sky than there was previously. And people started to say, oh, thank you for bringing that to my attention. So again, it's been fun to be able to get people that thought it was negative, but to turn it into a positive, just with educating them that look down the street where they didn't remove those traffic or street lights and, the light pollution. Yeah. So again, it's helping.
That's a really good point. Pointing out those wins. That's a great point, Kevin. That's really good.
You try your best.
People don't recognize that. Most people wouldn't be at all thinking in that wavelength, right?
Yeah. You have to look, again, even though you're seeing something that is, you're not used to, people don't like change. Again, it's like, it is what it is, but everything is changing. Everything we see through our telescopes is moving. We don't know it, but everything is moving and changing. But again, once you just try to, and again, what we're doing here today, it's all about educating, communicating, educating. This isn't that bad. It's like, there's a win here, and it's just, a matter of communicating.
Well, I think we hit on the astrophotography part of the show pretty darn well. And I appreciate the great conversation we have through here. One last thing I think I just want to touch on is, did you guys at all take a look at the photos from pre-Helena and then post-Helena as it ripped through the Carolinas and Georgia and Alabama in that area? And it's kind of astounding how you have a patchwork. If you haven't seen it at home, I know there's a meme about this one out there, but we have an actual NOAA video on that. And you have essentially a grid work of lights, satellite imagery, and then it just went black where the hurricane passed through. And I know, we have some listeners probably who've been affected by this hurricane, and it's been devastating for many people in the South. But it's really interesting to see that disparity. And I just wonder, that's when we look at modernity, we so much base everything on light. Do you guys think that tells the whole story of what's going on there?
It paints a picture for sure. I mean, seeing those before and afters in that part of the country, you really see, I mean, I can point out Atlanta. I don't have to know the inner workings of the state of Georgia to know exactly where Atlanta is looking at that map. But you can also, you could probably, if you knew a little bit better about Georgia, you could point out those smaller cities, if you will. But with all that, especially in the southeastern part of the state, like obviously those strings of lights are connecting, they're connecting roads in arteries through the state, and all that being gone, it's quite breathtaking to see that infrastructure can be so just in an instant wiped away. But I look at something like this, and this is only through my point of view. I look at something like this and I say, okay, this is obviously horrible. People's lives have been ruined, lives lost. It's awful situation. No two ways about it. But what an opportunity to, as these towns rebuild, think about, all right, how do we build things better? Maybe these towns weren't, in a place to modernize things, but now this great force of nature came and made the decision that there's time to kind of start fresh and start looking at doing things better. And hopefully part of that conversation is how we do lighting better, because it's going to have to be replaced, right. And so what better way to look at it? Okay, what can we do? What resources do we have to look at this and do things in a more responsible way? And so that's me trying to look at the silver lining of something like a destructive hurricane. And I really hope that the people of Georgia and these towns can think about that. Do we need a light here? There was a light here before. Do we need it now? It's a little bit different development from when it was 10, 20, 30 years ago. So that's kind of a hope that I have when I see things like this.
Or potentially have more responsible fixtures, right?
Yeah.
Because the chances
absolutely.
are the light's still probably going to be there. But instead of having it as, a 4,000 Kelvin light or some kind of random, sodium, you could have a more responsible fixture in there.
Yeah, no doubt all of these lights that will be replaced are probably going to be LED.
Yeah.
Because that's just going to be the standard from now on.
Yeah, without a doubt, they're going to be LED.
So hopefully it's just, it's fully shielded, low brightness, low lumen output, warmer color temperature. And that's going to make this before map look a little bit better.
I've noticed in this show, in time doing this show, is that most people prefer warmer temperatures. It's not even a toss-up. It's you see city polls and you see respondents and surveys and whatnot when communities go out to kind of see about new LED changeover, and they prefer the warmer. Like 2,700 is a preferable number for a lot of people. They don't want 4,000. 3,000 they're, I guess, probably fine with, but 2,700 I think is where they want to be. It's interesting. We never hear that in news. That's never in any of the news, but it seems to be a constant theme whenever I come across these stories about cities doing LED upgrades and they go and survey the community and the community says, oh, we warmer the better. In my mind saying, hey, we want to kind of keep, we don't want to change stuff outside too much. I think that's what I read into it, but that could be
the objections. I think the objections to lighting retrofits for the most part have been people want to see, warmer lights, right? I don't know of any where they said, oh, this isn't harsh enough. It's not bluish enough. It's not like, I want it to look more like a prison yard or, that you never see comments or you never see cities and towns backpedaling to make the lights more bright and more blue, right? They're always putting in bright 4,000, 5,000 Kelvin lights and then backtracking and replacing them with warmer lights. It never goes the other way. It's always going towards warmer lights when you see these sort of pushback from cities and towns.
Yeah, and that blows my mind because these cities and towns, and they go and everyone's doing this. Everyone's going through this upgrade, and seemingly none of the communities look at each other when they do this. It just feels very much like the salesman is driving the ship, and for whatever reason, he gets big commission on 4,000 Kelvin lights. Probably because I guess they're maybe the cheapest to make. Although we had Tim Brothers from Massachusetts on who told us that his light fixtures, 2,700s, the actual good light fixtures were cheaper than the normal ones that the municipality was trying to push down.
I think early on it was, this is not the case anymore, but early on the peak efficiency for LEDs was around that 3,000, 4,000 Kelvin, actually more like 4,000 Kelvin, right? So you could get the most light output for the minimal amount of input, energy input. So that's why I think initially when LEDs were first making an appearance in cities and towns, it was, hey, let's maximize the efficiency, get the most amount of light as we can and drive down our energy costs as much as we can. And then that's when a lot of the pushback started.
Oh, that's really good knowledge, Frank. I didn't realize that makes plenty of sense if that's an efficiency gain is what they're looking at there. Well, this blends nicely into some news we got out of Memphis, where the Department of Energy gave Memphis a Sustainability and Lighting Award, actually their concessionaire, a Sustainability and Lighting Award for converting 77,000 streetlights. And they're doing this over the course of, I believe it's 2 years. They're not done yet. They're really close. And they're switching it over to 3,000 Kelvin, warm white LED. They predict to be saving 26,000 tons of greenhouse gas emissions.
Do you remember when there were blackouts? I share this all the time with Street Corner Astronomy because people come down from New York City and, Philadelphia. But, there's been blackouts in Philadelphia or in New York City years ago. Thankfully, it's not happening frequently. But when it does occur, guess what the most amount of phone calls are to 911? Anybody hear that?
Feel free.
About the skies in the sky, the stars in the sky.
They were strange clouds. Yeah.
They were calling the police on the Milky Way. Yeah. So they were seeing something that they never saw before. So they were calling the police on the Milky Way because they could see it. So again, it's just interesting what happened during blackouts. Yeah. So, and again, when they just put up those promenade lights, they put, 27K lights in. Well, guess what? The county came in and put 5,000 K lights on their light poles at the entrances for those, for the promenade. So it just light polluted the promenade, even though they're shooting down. But you can see the difference between the 27, K, underneath the promenade, and all of a sudden. And I've already talked to the mayor, but here's a situation where the county's not on the same page of, the city of Cape May. Coming up with new ordinances for, light pollution, that they just enacted within the past year. But here's the county, going against, that they're not on the same page. So it's, again, about educating, our county people that are, putting in these lights.
Well, you do have the educational vote side too there, Kevin.
Yeah.
That always helps. Well, one thing that I thought was interesting about the North Carolina situation was that during big storms like this, you expect to have cell phone service at the very least. And that's not the case in North Carolina. That fell through because of the rough damage that was going on and the choppy terrain. Well, what about this? We have potentially good news for your hurricane victims, but how about for the rest of us? Cell phone service may forever be changed, as last month, SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket launched new AST space mobile satellites named the Blue Walkers into orbit. If you'll recall that way back in September of 2022, the first satellite was launched, bringing awe and fear from land-based astronomers when the unfurled satellite held a brightness magnitude of 3.5, and then once unraveled, it shot up to 0.4 magnitude, making 100 times brighter. For you at home who may not be aware of this astronomical measure of magnitude, it's brightness of sky objects. The measure is a bit counterintuitive. It's a logarithmic scale. So it's not linear. So think about the brightness increases and decreases at greater rate than simply one increment. It's kind of akin to a dimmer switch. But the other piece about magnitude is that a scale runs a bit like a golf game. Negative magnitudes are very bright, while higher number positive magnitudes are very dim. So in this case, in October of 2023, when the initial Blue Walker unfurled, it had a magnitude of close to 0. Whereas most Starlink trains that you probably have seen somewhere sit between 1 to 2 magnitude, making the Starlink trains dimmer than the unfurled Blue Walker. Currently, Starlink satellites sit somewhere in the 3 to 5 range of magnitudes. Most suburban skies may have a limiting magnitude due to light pollution around 4, 5, 6, just to put all of this into perspective. So circling back to the story at hand here, these are big satellites, big enough that CEO Abel Avalon proudly proclaimed on X when the company first tested the Blue Walkers, Made in Texas, size matters. The hope and dream of AST is that they launch upwards of 168 satellites. AST will be servicing the AT&T cellular network here in the States. But wait, it doesn't stop there. AST wants to put up satellites 3.5 times bigger than the current Blue Walkers. And the current Blue Walkers already sit at 690 square feet, which unfurled, that Blue Walker is about the size of a studio apartment. So my gut's saying this probably isn't great for the night sky. I'm just curious about your thoughts. Frank, I see you moving over there. How should we interpret this?
This is a tricky one, I think. It's the problem, I think, that's happening here is that our policies haven't caught up with the problem, right? The problem is escalating at a really rapid rate, but our policy of reaction is so behind, and that happens a lot of times in environmental issues where an issue takes off and a lot of damage is done before society and governments can formulate a response, right? So I think that's where we are with satellite and night sky protection, is that right now there really isn't much of any regulation or policy or conservation strategies to deal with this. And things are going so fast that we're seeing a lot of, it's going to end up, we're going to look back on this time and say, wow, a lot of damage happened, right? During this time frame. And because we haven't really caught up with on the policy side. So I think, we're sort of need to step it up. We need to understand the issue more. We need to get governments involved. We need to get policies. We need to get, even corporate policies, get these corporations that are doing this to implement policies to reduce the problem before it gets out of hand. And there's been a little bit of that, I think, with Elon Musk, at least entertaining the idea of reducing the reflectivity of the Starlink satellites. There's been a little bit of those conversations, but I think that really needs to step up for us to kind of get in front of this problem.
Well, Starlink has been putting certain coatings on, and they've been doing,
right.
They have been trying to reduce the reflexibility of it. But let me play devil's advocate here. Say the Blue Walkers knock it out of the park and they provide outstanding service. They set the standard for LEO, low Earth orbit, communication satellites. Why is that bad for humanity?
I don't think it is. I think it's a positive for humanity, but like many positive aspects to society, there are trade-offs, right? There are externalities, right? There are negative aspects, and the ultimate goal is to enhance those positives while minimizing or reducing or mitigating the negatives, right? And so we're I think we need to get ahead of this and start to diminish or reduce the negative consequences of this positive thing. It's just that while we wait to do that, a lot of damage can happen.
It should be noted that I actually reached out to AST because I would like to just hear what they're doing. Haven't heard back from them. But beyond that, a story that came out of New Zealand, international lawyer William Grant feels that New Zealand has a duty to protect night skies from this assault by ever larger and brighter lower Earth orbit eyesores. He cites that the many New Zealand indigenous communities that rely on nighttime skies for cultural significance and pleads for a recognition of both entrepreneurial enthusiasm with government-backed restraint in the form of regulations from New Zealand-based space economy manufacturers. Grant's hope is that New Zealand is able to produce a precedent that can then be utilized as legal foundation for responsible industry practices. Here in the States, very much feels like space economy is given a long leash because it's new, and they really want to have, they want the U.S. to kind of lead the way in it, right? And I just don't see how, unless it's coming from, say, New Zealand or Europe, how you'll have any kind of standardization on this issue.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things where the money does all the talking. If they can't launch these satellites from here, they're going to do it somewhere else that will let them too. And that's, Frank, what you're kind of saying, like the policy thing, it's hard enough for this country to catch up on policy. We're talking about how many sovereign nations across the world kind of trying to be on the same page about things like that, especially with, space communication and things of that nature. It it takes a lot to get things moving. And yeah, this is really developing and evolving quickly because the money is there for it. And money is going to outpace everything. We actually had an advocate action meeting this month of October, it was last month, September. And we had Dr. Lindsay talk to us about space policy when it comes to low Earth satellites and things like that. So, if there's more to be said about this conversation, I welcome people to check out the recording of that. And Bill, I'd be happy to share where that lives with you for your show notes. But yeah, I mean, this is something that policymakers here in this country are certainly talking about more and more. It's just a matter of do we have to slam on the brakes to catch up and figure out what's good and what's not? My thing about this particular thing too is whether or not, not just can we see these things from Earth as bright as they need to be. I'm thinking about the space junk, what that means for space travel and other endeavors that we need to put up in, low Earth orbit or beyond. What does this mean for that sort of stuff, those economies too? So it's a head scratcher, no doubt about it.
Yeah. I think John Berenstein mentioned those very issues when he came on a couple months back. Well, an additional cause for concern, perhaps, comes from researchers in an article in Geophysics Research Letters, which identified an estimated 646% increase in atmospheric aluminum oxides per year, stemming from the high amount of disposable re-entry of these low Earth orbit satellites. As I understand it from when John was on, they'll be shooting up and then coming down at the same time. Not obviously the same satellite, but that's kind of the way it's going to be the conveyor belt. And by coming down, it means it just burns up in the atmosphere, lands somewhere, I guess, in the ocean. So the fear is that the aluminum oxides may speed up ozone layer depletion, thus undoing what seemingly is the lone climate problem that humanity's actually been able to figure out. Well, let's talk about measurements. This is a pretty important topic too, and it's something that we never really talk about, at least on the innovation side, unless Ken Walczak is on, who's really well versed in this sort of research. We had a couple of articles come through this month that discuss some innovative approaches to obtaining nighttime sky brightness measurements. The go-to device that many use in the nighttime sky is called a sky quality meter, often abbreviated to SQM. And the SQM meter runs in the low 100s USD. And for some reason, it's listed on Amazon under musical instruments. You guys got to look that up. But it is not, I don't know. Sure. Can any of your SQM meters, do they play a tune? I'm not sure what you do to make it sing.
If I take my phone to it and then open up, a music app, sure.
You have to translate the numbers, right? So quite odd. Okay. But say you aren't happy with the SQM and you're looking for trying something different. Well, here's a do-it-yourself project that comes to us via Nature Reviews Earth and the Environment. The cylindrical devices look to be slightly longer than your standard cell phone. The data collected from the devices feeds right into the Gaia map of brightness and the natural sky model, also known by the acronym GAMBANS. These devices not only measure light, but they also measure temperature and humidity. And what they are is they're devices you can make at home. The instructions are in this article. And it's actually quite a clever device that can even integrate into the home assistant software, some of the open source home assistant software. One article even has the total components priced at $65, which comes in at about half the rate of the Unihydron SQM musical instrument, meter. This little device, I know, I was speaking to someone who I actually did a talk for not too long ago in her class. She said, "Oh, this is great. We can actually make one of these with our robotics team. It'll be a nice little project that they could do." So this is something out there, a very neat little fun project if you're looking to build something. And there's also another option out there that I think could be very practical. Something like this, when mainstream, I think it'll be very practical for applications for municipal officers, I think code enforcement or municipal lighting engineers. In a paper from the journal Drones, researchers attempted to build a purposeful drone for the explicit goal of measuring light pollution at a micro level. And that is to say, at a warehouse facility or a specific street lamp or even a house, a yard. So something very nuanced instead of being a much more macro view. And I'm curious about this drone idea. Do you think we could actually ever have better tools? And this is always a hiccup for municipalities where they can't get enforcement of these codes. Would this be a path to actually having enforcement of that code?
I think it does fill a need, right? Mm-hmm. We have been historically been looking at light pollution at this macro level where we're looking at, the amount of light from a city, light dome from a city, or the national, levels or global levels, or, we've been measuring it at that kind of a scale. And, you can enforce or you can manage what you can measure, right? And so if you can measure the light levels coming from individual facilities, then you've got somebody that's responsible for that facility, right? Then you can sort of target your enforcement, target your work and your management and your outreach to people that are, that are the kind of the hotspots. We've sort of known some things, but from a very sort of anecdotal way, right? Like when I lived in Fort Collins, the worst offenders for light pollution were the car lots, right? Mm-hmm. Car lots are notorious for just lighting up everything. Having a way to measure that and put it into context with other facilities was something that we really couldn't do very well. And so I think having a drone or a measurement device that can look at light pollution at that level would be really valuable in terms of helping us manage, not necessarily just enforcing, but just helping us do outreach and manage and go and talk to those people. And, that way you're sort of putting your resources and your time in the places that are going to get the most benefit.
Yeah. And Frank, I feel like a lot of the issues that we see pop up around municipal lighting, around light trespass, are really driven because there's a lack of data, right? And if we have more data, if we have more measurements in general, right? I think if we have more measurements and more data, we'd have better principled approaches to how we do outdoor lighting.
Yep, absolutely. And I think, and just sort of taking that one step further is that if you can do that measurement on this individual facility level, then you even, by an order of magnitude, you increase your ability to really manage that resource effectively.
Yeah, and then Kevin can go back and point to Cape May County and say, hey, look, guys, look at these numbers right here. We were fine. We covered all of our foot candles here, but now we have enough to light up part of the moon.
We have they just actually, put this ordinance in, and I've been hearing chatter around town from, again, I'm concerned that, again, they have restrictions on residents, but they don't have it on commercial properties. So, again, it's a little bit of a double-edged sword. So now all of a sudden you've got, and again, I like the idea of at least letting people know we live in a vacation area. So people have a lot of rental homes and they light them up at night. But again, what kind of lighting are you doing? You're doing up lighting, down lighting. And again, I like the idea of policing, maybe the night sky. So again, but, putting warnings out, instead of tickets, but just educating people that, your lights are too bright. Again, it's like we're starting, but we have these ordinances and it's just re-educating, but making people accountable that, we do have this. So, and I'm doing my best just to let people know that, this is light pollution and this is how it can help. So, we just do our best. But
Kevin, you're in a unique spot too, because we'll get to it in the second half, but Cape May, and I don't want to dwell on it too much here, but Cape May is such an ecologically important area of the country. And yes, for birding, insects is a very important spot. And I think there is something to be said for having responsible policies in such an important area. Well, since you're talking about people's responses or people's understanding of this, there's a study that came out in the Journal of Urban Management. I don't know how many of you guys read the study. Frank, I feel like you did. So you're probably not allowed to respond to this one. But I don't know about Michael or Kevin. So I'll go through this. The researchers polled 358 individuals between 15 to 65 to see what they knew about light pollution. This is over in India. I'm going to ask you two gentlemen to pick a number closest to the real number without going over. So question number one, in this study, what percentage of folks polled heard the term light pollution? Michael.
350 people or so polled?
Yes.
In India?
That's right.
I'm going to go with less than 5%. I'm going to say 5%.
Okay. Kevin?
Yeah, I was, it's less than 10,
Okay. Well,
10%.
Kevin, you are the winner here. However, it's because you're 40% below the number of people who have actually heard of light pollution. 50% of respondents had heard of light pollution, which is great news.
Yeah, it is great news.
Yeah.
In India, no less, right?
That's right.
Kevin, we're just pessimists.
Yeah. I had written down, it's like I wrote down 75% because I thought it was, American. And I unfortunately put down 5 or 10% because I thought it was India. But no offense, but I'm glad to hear that our numbers are really actually so low. So that's really good that, they're getting information someplace that they've heard about it.
That's right. Well, question number 2. What percentage of folks polled claimed that they sometimes heard the term light pollution in their daily life? Okay, give it to you, Kevin. You can take the lead on this one.
Again, I'm going to say maybe 20%.
Okay. Michael.
Yeah, that sounds. I'll go 21%. I'll play Price is Right.
All right. Well, you guys both went over.
Oh boy. Yeah.
10.6% of the respondents felt that they sometimes heard the term light pollution in their daily life. Only 3.6% said that they heard it all the time, and a majority, 57.5%, said not at all. Question number 3. What percentage of folks claim to be somewhat aware of the potential threat of light pollution? And Mike, back to you on this one.
Okay. Somewhat aware.
Somewhat aware.
I'm somewhat aware of many things in my life. I'll go with 30%.
Okay.
I'm not going to say 31%, but I'm going to say 45.
All right. Well, 31% actually was it. So, Michael, congratulations.
Ooh,
you got it.
Nice.
You should have said 31%.
Yeah.
30.1%, I think, is the best answer in that. 4.5% of people were very much aware, but 47.8% were not aware of the potential threat of light pollution. So, interesting study here. And I think we had in the Artificial Light at Night conference that happened last year, I think there's a similar study where many people were aware, or at least cursorily aware. They kind of had this knowledge from just general conversation that it's out there. They didn't look to see what people want to do about it. And hopefully it doesn't survey the same way that survey in, I think it was Switzerland, where most people were aware of it, think it's terrible, and want to do nothing about it. Let's finish up here with this last piece. This is a fun one. And I don't know if you guys have been watching any of the baseball playoffs. And my beloved Phillies didn't show up. They just, another group of, I guess the Reading Phillies showed up for that series against the Mets. The Phillies did not. And that was quite embarrassing. But the Mets went on to play the Dodgers. And in that series, you got to see something that was actually pretty neat in the stadium. It's, again, we have cheaper, more compact lighting fixtures that you can use pretty much anywhere. So what the New York Mets did in Citi Field, they hired a company called PixMob based out of Montreal, and they installed 3,500 LED strips on the railings in the aisles throughout the entire ballpark that's controlled by a central location. And what happens is as the night continues on, the stadium lights are actually dimmed a little bit so that it looks like the railings, the lights, the royal blue and orange of the Mets colors are going up the aisles. It's pretty neat. I'm not sure if you guys have seen anything like that. We see that a lot in college football. Usually the lights do some kind of like wavy black and white thing going on. Light isn't always bad. Let me rephrase that. When it goes into an area that affects other people or affects ecology and whatnot, that's when we have problems with light pollution. But is this a pollutant situation here? This feels like a very kind of responsible approach to artistic light.
Yeah, I mean, it could. I think for me, it could still be a pollutant because no light is no pollution. But I mean, if you do it in a better way, then I think that's all we can ask for. And it's great to see that the Mets are taking some thought into it. Like, I mean, I didn't see it. I haven't seen a picture of it, but that sounds like a really cool thing.
Yeah. I think we've touched on this on other shows I've been on too. Is there sort of a cultural aspect to light, right? So seeing the colors of your team, right, in light, and there's a kind of a light has very positive connotations in our society and in our culture, and if it's a way to celebrate, your team through having colored lights in the stadium, I think that's a positive use of the cultural aspect of lighting. I think as long as it's not, I think there's use and there's misuse, right? And I think if it's a use of lighting that's reasonable, and it's not a misuse of lighting where they're wasting the light or, shining the light up in the sky or anything, then I think it's a positive to sort of highlight the positive aspects of lighting. I don't have a problem with that. I think as long as, it's being done responsibly, we can celebrate light, right? We can do that. So that's kind of my take on it.
Yeah, because Frank, it's in a situation where you expect to have light, right? You're at a sporting event. Now, I can't vouch for the actual stadium light, the actual fixtures atop the stadium, but you're in a situation where you expect to have light. It's there for a purpose. It's actually being deliberately used in a way. Everyone there is accepting of its use. It's a very different path than staying in a neighborhood or doing something in a forest. Mike, I totally understand your point. Any light, by definition, from the transactions of the Royal Society B, I believe that's how you say it, they did a very good, concise, and very to the point belief that light itself is a pollutant. And we should be deliberate on how we use it, and also should be, use it in a mindful way. And here, the Mets aren't, they're not installing spotlights, say, that you would have in Vegas or whatnot. You're not seeing these things go out into the sky. It's staying within the stadium, and it's a moderate use of the light. So,
yeah. I also think it's important that we don't, as advocates, that we don't come across as anti-light.
Yes.
Right. And so I think we need to focus our message on the appropriate use of lighting, because I think a lot of the reaction that we as advocates get is that, oh, you're trying to get rid of all the lights. Well, no, it's not our goal. It's just where there is lighting and where lighting is needed to do it efficiently and do it, in a way that doesn't cause other ecological or human, social problems.
In the same way you use pesticides, right? Do it in a very responsible way. Don't try and bathe the whole forest or the whole yard in pesticides. Just knock out certain areas that you need to target, and then, make sure you keep in a controlled location and move on. Let's stop here for today. We'll pick up the second half of the show in 2 weeks. I'd like to thank my guests. I think this is a lot of fun. With us from the Night Sky Resource Center, 15 years of hard labor in the national parks, Mr. Frank Turina. Thank you again for joining us. And I know you've even seen the skies from down there in the promised land of Chile. A terrible, terrible life you lead.
Yeah.
Kevin Beare from CapeMayAstro. You can find all of his videos over on TikTok and Instagram Reels. And you can also say hi to him next time you're at Cape May. Where do people have to go? Are you still in the same particular spot, Kevin? Where do people have to go to say hi to you?
Again, right now I've been floating around, obviously, because of the comet and what's going on. So again, I've been trying to post, and let everybody know, usually on Instagram. Right now I'm working on a website, more educational and expanding into YouTube, and I'm looking forward to be able to share more. So, but right now, the best way to be able to contact me, that I have all the news and updates, is through Instagram on CapeMayAstro.
Okay. And then lastly, we have from Dark Sky itself, someone who really goes far and wide to make sure that we get the best skies wherever we go camping. And that's Mr. Michael Rymer, who's in the middle of South Dakota right now. Is that right?
North Dakota.
North Dakota.
Close
okay.
enough. Yeah, it's very close to the border there. The tri-state area, as they call it.
Well, as a reminder, you at home can join the conversation over on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, or even by texting the show right in the show notes. We record light pollution news once a month. This month's recording date was October 20th. Supporters of the show can join us as live audience members, where we have post-show chat with guests once the recording is done. So thank you once more for joining today. I'm your host, Bill McGeeney, reminding you only to shine the light where it's needed. Have a great November, everyone. We will see you in 2 weeks. Hey, there's no question for this show, but I'm curious if you took some great shots of Zushinshan A3, the comet that just passed through. I'd be really thrilled to see them. Feel free to tag us in whatever social media that you've put them on, or you can just send them over bill@lightpollutionnews.com, and we'll try and get those reposted up there with your credit.